So, Tigers Are Not Afraid is a pretty damn dark, a dark horror film. I guess like it's a little tough to describe it exactly. It's somewhere between like a horror film, between a mystery. It does have some urban fantasy elements in it as well. It feels very much akin to something like Pan's Labyrinth, where it's very much about real world horror, but then there are fantastical elements that are weaved into the story, that try to bring about more allegory and meaning. And Tigers Are Not Afraid is definitely in that same league. The story is about Estrella, who is a young girl in Mexico, just going to school, learning about fairy tales and fun stuff like that. And then one day her school is shot up, and she survives the incident, but she witnesses death and destruction. And her teacher basically says, like, you can be a fairy, we can write our own fairy tale. So here's some chalk, make some wishes with it. You can make wishes with it. And she comes home and finds out that her mom isn't there, and she desperately wants her mom back and decides to make a wish on it. The only thing is that her mother was killed. And so when her mother returns to her, it's kind of in the form of a haunting spirit. And so Estrella is kind of granted this sort of magical power that allows her to communicate with the dead. Actually, no, it pretty much outright allows her to communicate with the dead. So realizing, that she doesn't have any mother and trying to find out, what really happened to her, she ends up befriending some orphans on the street. Because, she's an orphan now. She decides, like, might as well make some friends with other kids who are in the same situation here in Mexico. And the thing is, like, in order to be within this gang of orphans, you pretty much have to prove yourself. So at one point, to prove herself to the group, she has to go and kill one of the members of this cartel. And she does so, but she does so via the means of these fantastical powers that have been given to her, where sort of like, these dark creatures, that seem supernatural in nature have basically come to help her in her time of need. So she kind of feels somewhat indestructible with this fantastical element, but at the same time, nobody's safe. Like, the orphans are not safe from these gangsters that basically want them dead, mostly because the gangsters know that these kids have information that could incriminate them. Now this is a film. It's very dark, and the kids are pretty much the heroes here, both in fantastical ways and both in like very brutal, street gang ways. They have to deal with the fact that they're constantly being hunted, and the fact that they might die. And there are some pretty tragic deaths here along the way. Some pretty unexpected deaths too. That really did quite shake me while watching this film. I almost feel like it should have been almost less fantastical with this type of story, just because I feel like the story of crime and feeling so helpless, when these kids realize that they could be kidnapped at any moment and killed at any moment by these gangsters, I feel is a strong enough story that I almost feel like the fantastical elements kind of distract. And it's mostly just because some of the effects here are kind of not quite there. They're not bad, but like you can very much tell a little bit of the uncanny valley here. In particular, because there's a tiger plushie that one of the characters has, that Estrella more or less kind of befriends as an actual living tiger that kind of helps her out here and there. And then later on, there's a literal tiger, because it's in the trailer. We kind of expect, it's called Tigers Are Not Afraid. You kind of expect a tiger there, at least if it's fantastical, But this is a very tough film to watch. It's kind of akin to watching, like I mentioned, Pan's Labyrinth, but I think another close comparison would be something like City of God, where there's a sort of like hopelessness of living in the slums, that you kind of want to escape into that fantasy world of fairy tales. So you understand why Estrella has these visions and wants to have these visions, because she wants to have like this power to make sure that that she can protect others, and that the bad people don't come to kill her and stuff like that. And and it resonates pretty well. This film has been around to a number of different festivals. It's just starting to hit the theaters now. I wholly recommend checking it out. It's definitely it's not an easy film to watch, and I'm very conflicted about whether I want to go back and watch it again, just because it is so dark and somber and really gets into the pit of your soul. Like I've mentioned this with like, stuff like It is like roller coaster horror. You go there expecting, big scares and frights and spookiness. And then there are other films like The Witch and It Comes at Night, which are, like very like depressing and relatable and, dark and rip your heart out type horror. And Tigers Are Not Afraid is definitely in that league, especially with these amazing kid actors here who do an amazing job, that basically just have their innocence ripped away from them. Pretty early on in the film is stripped away, and then it just keeps getting stripped further and further as like the hopelessness and the darkness keeps mounting on this film. So there's obviously like huge allegory and cultural aspects to it as well. And it creates this certain sensation you have that you're watching something very, very, very emotional and very important. So go see it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to break the flow there, but it really is a damn good film. I absolutely loved it. Like I said, I do think some of the fantasy elements get a little bit in the way, but not too much in the way that the real emotional core of the story doesn't get glazed over. So, for Tigers Are Not Afraid, 4 out of 5 stars.